Hi guys, in this video what I'm going to be doing is doing a quick walkthrough of this secondary project that I'm building alongside my MonoGame games. So I've called this Calimoe. It's just a silly kind of acronym, but I just wanted a name that was unlikely to clash with anything else in sort of like generic sort of namespaces. So let me just go through what this contains at the moment. It's not a whole lot. So to begin with, I have got the game class. So one thing that I mentioned in my Pong walkthrough is that this inherits from the Calimoe class and not from the game class. So game is what comes with the MonoGame framework, and so my class is just inheriting from there. So it's just kind of like an interim buffer in a way, just to give me a little bit of extra functionality. So for example, one thing that I've got on here, just a really simple thing, it just does an FPS, keeps track of the FPS. So I've got a font on there, a sprite font for that, and then it can just keep you can set a target frame rate if you want that. So if you want it at less than a default of 60, you can do that, and then in the update it just updates the FPS, which simply does a little mathematical calculation there, and then if it's shown it will just draw that to the screen. So initially I have it as true. I actually think I'm actually going to change that, because I think by default I'm probably not going to want to put that on. But then if you wanted to turn on that functionality, it's just one line of code to put that in the base class. But the main thing that this does is have other classes which are going to be used as helpers. So the first one is the asset management. So in any MonoGame game, I wish they didn't call it MonoGame. You've got this content builder tool which comes equipped with it, and this allows you to load up all of your various things. So I've got fonts, music, sound effects, textures. I've also got something called fallback, which I'm going to talk about here in this asset management. So rather than writing all these lines of code, which is basically content dot load content. Let me have a look. So here's my asset manager class. So yes, it's just content.load. So this is just basically a wrapper around the content manager class that comes with the MonoGame framework. So it can load in a font for you, it can load in a texture for you, it can load in a sound effect, it can load in music. But what I wanted was, first of all, a way of just making the code a little bit shorter, a little bit cleaner, but also something that is just going to give you a little bit of safety. So one of the things that I did when I was developing my Pong game is I kept changing around the music and the sound effects, and on one of the occasions I made a mistake. I forgot to change the name of the asset that I was using, and the game crashed, and I thought, oh, that's not good. Now for things like sounds in particular, I don't want the game to crash if there's a missing sound. So one of the things that I've done here is I've put in some fallback things. So I have got some assets for a silent sound effect and a silent song. And then similarly, I've got a missing texture. Actually, I should show you what they look like, the missing texture. 1 second. So in my content folder, I've got this fallback directory. And then in here, I've got 3 different textures for different sizes. So a 32 pixel, 64 and 128. And then I've got 2 sound files. The WAV file is for the sound effects, and then silent song is an MP3. These are literally just, it's even less than 1 second of audio. Actually, the MP3 didn't work. I had to convert it into an OGG file, so I can actually get rid of that MP3, I think. So then what my asset manager does is it loads these initially, and then it can use that as a fallback if they're not found. So the missing texture, by default, that's going to be, I think you have to put in you put in an initial texture size. So I've used it as 64, and I tested this by, actually I can show you. So where I'm in my play state, if I am loading, where do I do it? Probably should have researched this a little bit better, really. So here I'm doing player paddle equals new paddle, and then I'm just passing in the name of the texture. So I'm passing this through to AM, which is my asset manager, and I'm saying I want you to load a texture for the left paddle and one for the right paddle. If I put in an X there, so something that is obviously non-existent, rebuild and play, then come on. It still actually works with this texture, but it's then quite visually clear that it's missing, but it doesn't crash the game, which is exactly what I wanted. Now, the only annoying thing about that is that this fallback folder in its entirety has to be copied into the game project for every game that I develop, but that's not exactly a huge deal. So that is the asset manager. Okay, next on to state management. I've mentioned state a few times. This is something for me that I am learning myself. So this book is a book that I mentioned in a previous video when I was going through my learning resources. This book is completely free to read on the web. You can, of course, buy a physical copy or an ebook. But if I go back to this now, go to the content and the state pattern, this article or this chapter in this book is absolutely the best thing that I have found for explaining state, why you need it. This diagram kind of explains it all. So right now I have got just the very beginnings of state management in here. So the state manager class really is just a wrapper around a dictionary. So it holds a string, which is nothing more than just the name of the class, and then the actual state itself, and it just allows you to add the state, switch it, and then it just keeps track of which one is the current state. Now this takes the update and the draw function. So this I showed this before in Pong. So if we look at the Pong game here, the update and draw are actually very simple, because all it does is just defers this to the state manager, and all of that does is defer it to the update for the actual state class itself. So the state class at the moment, there's basically nothing in it. It just has the functions there to that you can override for when you enter a state, when you exit a state. You can override anything else. So load content, input, I'll show you in a moment, the update and the draw. So what this line is here, by the way, this is input handling, but I'll go over that in a moment. So if I go to my Pong game and I've got these two different states, the main thing that they do is going to be loading all of the content which is required for that particular state. So on the play state, this has got all of the textures. The title state is basically a font, but both of them have got some music, and this is one thing that I do. I override the enter function on both of these states, and this is where I play that the music for that particular state. So that was one of the bugs that I had at the beginning when I was developing this, was when I was trying to put music on. I was previously handling state by just checking for a particular key, which is pressing the space key from the title screen, and it'd start playing the game. But when I tried to play a sound file, it was just going it's basically just restarting it on every frame, and I thought, oh no, that's not what I want. So having a state class helped me do this. So at the moment, this is very, very lightweight. As I go through building more games, I should know what to do with this, basically. So input handling, again, this is something, all of these are very, very lightweight at the moment, because I don't really need much yet. As I develop more games, hopefully I'll know what to do. So the main thing that this does is it keeps track of the keyboard state and the mouse state, and has a look at where it was on the previous frame. So this is useful with keys, for example. So in the Pong game, you're literally holding down the key. So as long as you keep holding down the W key, the paddle keeps moving up. Hold down the S, it keeps moving down. But there's going to be other situations where you just want to know if a key has been pressed, not held down. And so to know that, you've got sort of like, was it down on the previous frame and now it's up in this frame? We can say that state has transitioned, so now you can say the key's pressed. So I've got little wrappers here, key down, key up, so this is literally wrapping around the keyboard class. So the keyboard class and the mouse state class come with MonoGame. Now currently I don't have any functions in here with regards to mouse functionality, simply because I haven't got to that stage yet. So I'm building this up as I go along. So my Pong game is a purely keyboard driven game. The next game I do, I'm probably going to do a Flappy Bird next, and do that as a mouse click, so Just click the mouse every time you want your mouse to your little bird to fly up. And so then I'll put some helper functions in here for the mouse. But the main thing on here is just a little keys pressed. So what this is looking is, what was the state last time? Was it down before? And is it up now? Then we can say a key has been pressed. So again, very, very lightweight for the moment. And so the last thing I've got in here is 2 game objects. Now, this at the moment is just a little helper. So this is all these things are probably going to change quite a bit. So for the text, I wanted an easier way to do things like, where was it? Yeah, I wanted to just be able to call a function to say center the text in the screen. I didn't want to be putting calls to this basically draw text. The basic draw, where's the code for that? Oh, I can't find it now. But basically the draw string function for MonoGame, here it is, takes several parameters. I didn't want my code littered with calls to this with a whole bunch of different complicated parameters. And so I've just created this class just to put some helpers for myself, just so that when I'm doing things like this, I haven't even used it. Oh yeah, I've called it here. So I've just said draw this text, center it horizontally, and that is my little enum that I've got here. Now the sprite object does a little bit more. This basically keeps track of 3 things, or a few things at the moment. So its position on the screen, its velocity, where it's moving, the scale, so this allows me to scale up the paddle, and it also keeps track of where those things started, so that I can then call a reset, which basically sets everything back to the start things. So again, just little wrappers. Update, it just applies the velocity to the position, and it also updates the bounds. So every sprite you can think of as having a little sort of bounding box around it, and that can be used for collision detection. But at the moment, all this does is handle a rectangular bounding box. So there might be other objects. So for example, for the ball, that's a circle, right? And I'm pretty sure MonoGame has got functions for doing collision detection based on a circle shape. If it doesn't, that's probably something I should put in this library. So again, this is really simple stuff. It's just starting. So basically this particular project, I'm going to be building this up as I go along, building the other games. And so I'll do sort of devlogs for this alongside the devlogs for whatever game I'm developing. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching. There's actually one thing that I forgot to mention, which is actually pretty important. So at the moment, this is a kind of a library project, so you can't execute it directly. It has to be included into another project. But I don't really know how to do that properly, so I've kind of kludged it at the moment. So over here I've gone to project, and then where is it, project reference, and oh, where is it? Yeah, it's here. So basically I've had to manually go and dig out the Calimoe DLL file from the debug folder, so that's not great. So if you were to, obviously the source code for this is posted on GitHub, and I'll put that in the description actually, but if you were to download the 2 repositories, one for the Pong game and one for the Calimoe project, you would need to manually add that reference in yourself, I'm pretty sure, to get it working, which is not ideal. You know, ideally I'd want to have it so that you could just put in a command line to kind of include the project correctly, and it'll just sort of build itself. But I don't really know how to do that stuff yet. Once I figure out how to do that stuff, I can build it properly. But for now, this is what I've got to do. Okay, that's it. Thank you.